Morning, everybody, and welcome to Bolivia Political Crossroads. After a break of 3 weeks, I believe it's been.
Yep.
Morning, Ernesto. Good morning, Rafael, Vera.
Rafael.
Good morning, Paul. Good morning, Ernesto.
Rafael, lower your camera just a tiny bit. Sorry, we should have done this in the housekeeping at the beginning. That's on me. So we've got a I guess a different program today in terms of content. The name would imply that we only speak about Bolivia, but Ernesto and I were talking about the situation in Colombia, which a lot of people, I don't think have a very clear idea of what's going on, as is most often the case with things pertinent to Latin America. Getting decent news or a good analysis on current events in English is quite tricky, and so with the situation going on in Colombia, it's been like 40 days or something like that since things started going crazy with all these protests. We decided to do the show. Rafael, leading into this, and to give some background to others that are watching or listening, you are Bolivian, but with a background in economics, and you've been living in Colombia for how long's it been now?
Half a year, almost.
Half a year.
Yeah.
Long enough. So that's why we wanted to invite you on, because I think you can give us a perspective that's definitely valuable, and we'll go with it and see if there's any comparisons we can make to the situation in Bolivia as well, maybe further along. So anything you want to add before Rafael gets started, Ernesto?
Oh, maybe just one. You mentioned it, but it's important to underline it. I think nowadays, more than ever in the past, I think that politics in Latin America is so interrelated. You know, if Castillo wins in Peru, the implication on Bolivia is so big because we're right next to each other. And as I said, today, more than 20 or 30 years ago, the influence is so big, politically speaking, you know. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think it's so important to be acquainted with what's happening in Colombia or in Venezuela or in Peru, because after all, there are waves that go through Latin America. That's maybe just giving a better reason for why we're doing this today, because it's political Bolivian politics, but Bolivian politics are influenced by Colombian politics, Peruvian politics, and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. That's it. Yeah.
All right. Rafael, you're up.
Yeah. Well, it looks like the event of tomorrow from Peru. It's going to be really important for Latin America as well, because we have a left-wing candidate running for president, and there's a lot of people that may support him, but also some other people are like, if we are going to vote for Keiko, we are going backwards, and we are going to vote for Fujimori. So I think the game for Bolivia, if Castillo wins, is like the left wing is going to be like uprising. Like they're going to say that, yes, socialism is better. See, Peru has chosen a socialist leader, and that's why we are really important. So they're going to become much eager, I think. And probably that's going to make that they will become more persistent with their policies and all the things that are going on in Bolivia. So I think we have to look for what's going to happen tomorrow in Peru.
Oh, the candidate Castillo. Thank you. Sorry, I'm thinking back. Peru had, what's the guy's name? Humala, right?
Yep.
Right.
And he was on the left, but he wasn't exactly what you call an extremist, correct?
Right.
At least that's the recollection I have of his presidency, in terms of and now it's, which is not the case with Castillo. Castillo is more in line with somebody like Evo or the MAS party in terms of being a little bit more focused on, I'm not so sure about policy, but at least in terms of the rhetoric and such, at least somebody would be more on the spectrum with, we could say, Evo or Arce at this point in Bolivia, and Maduro in Venezuela. He's a bit more extreme. And Ernesto, you might be good at, you're probably more up to speed on that.
The thing is, I just don't want to expand all this introduction, but yeah, you brought it up, and I think it's important to clarify things. I think that Humala, as you say, was a guy that in his discourse and campaign was trying to become like an Evo in Bolivia. But there was a problem in Peru in doing that, and it's the economic situation. Peru had undergone one of the strongest economic growths of Latin America. Mm-hmm. And it was so strong, I don't recall the numbers, but it was like 15% at one point. You know, they were really big on growth. And the whole issue was that Peruvians, although they voted for Humala, they voted because there was sympathy for him, for his position, but not necessarily for a change in the political economic view of the country. And I think he realized that, and he was a good politician in that sense, because realizing that, when he became president, he continued the policies of the political right. So nothing really happened in those terms. And I think this is good to introduce Colombia. You know, even though there was growth in Peru for so many years, that growth didn't mean anything for the majority of Peruvians, because although the richer people got richer and the middle class probably gained a lot, the poorer people of Peru are as poor as they have always been. And I think I'm so far away from Colombia, and I don't know much about Colombian politics, but my feeling is that something like that is happening there too, because it's not new for Peru to have some proximity with the left, because Peruvians have had at different moments even military governments of the left, like in the late 60s. Mm-hmm. But in Colombia, the left has really been dead, except for the left that was in the guerrilla. The left in Colombia was not in politics, in democratic politics. The left in Colombia was in the jungle with the FARC, with the ELN, with the people that were in the jungle. But in the political process, in the political democratic process, that the right didn't have. I'm trying
to think of a leftist president in Colombia.
Well, that's the point.
I can't think of any.
No. There hasn't been one. In Colombia, in 1948, they elected a leftist, but the right had an upheaval, a violent upheaval, which was called El Bogotazo. And in El Bogotazo, they killed him, and the left was proscripted from Colombia virtually. So that's the reason why the left never grew in democratic politics, and the right took the government in the politics of Colombia and proscribed the left, and the left became guerrilleros, and that was it, you know. So what we're seeing now, and I think that's important of having Rafa here, is that at least in my view, and it's not probably just my view, it's reality, you know. There is a country that is desperate. Colombia is desperate for change. The majority of Colombians are not happy with what is happening. Colombia has been a model in South America. Like Chile, Colombia has been a model in economic growth, but that didn't mean the well-being of the majority. And the majority are not happy. And the majority is in upheaval right now in Colombia, and a change is needed in the left, is opening the door for democratic participation. So yeah, it's very strange to see what's happening in Colombia. Colombia is a country that was not expected to be in political problems, but it is in very deep political problems, more than even Colombians suspected, I think.
So you think COVID was kind of like gasoline, right? I mean, in terms of, you know,
Fuel.
exacerbating something that was
That was there.
that
Yeah.
was already there.
That
Go
was
ahead, Raf.
already-
Actually, before COVID, there were strikes already. Like in December 2019, I think people were demanding a lot of things from the government. There were demonstrations downtown Bogota, and they were persistent. It was like a week of confrontation. And then the pandemic came. I think the pandemic came to soften this movement a little bit, because there were how you call this, people had to stay at home and people had to stop working. So the pandemic was the thing that stopped this movement somehow. But later, what we are seeing right now is like there's a lot of demonstrations rising again against the government, right? There's a population that is not being attended by the national government right now. I'm not sure. I have a short presentation about what are the main characteristics of Colombia economically. Maybe we can start by then. I don't know if you can give me
screen sharing privileges.
Yeah. Let me share my presentation for.
Okay.
Share screen.
Go right ahead.
Let's see. Yeah, I prepared this presentation. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So this is just a little bit of the context of how Colombia is a standing ground in South America, right? First is the third largest economy in Latin America after Brazil and Argentina.
South America.
In South America only, yeah.
It beats out Chile. I had no idea about that. Wow.
Yeah, Chile is $253 billion GDP. And also it's the fifth economy with the highest GDP per capita in the region, right? After Brazil. And it's the second largest in population. So the country that has the most is Brazil, but Colombia is like, they have about 51 million people living there.
I wasn't sure about that. It's bigger than Argentina.
I would have put Argentina in place.
Yeah, it's bigger than Argentina. So if you can compare this one with GDP, you can see that inequality might have to play a little bit there, right? Population and GDP. Well, the pandemic, as it came, is the worst recession that happened to Colombia right now. It's like for year 2020, they got a drop of 6.8% in GDP.
Similar to Bolivia, right?
Yeah, it is much more than Bolivia, and which is the first worst recession since 1999. In 1999, what happened was the bubble, the financial crash in U.S., which affected the Colombian economy.
Right.
What we can see behind is that those are all the sectors that got affected in the economy in Colombia. Construction had a drop of 25.8%. Then mining, commerce, leisure, manufacture, professional services, even communications and utilities had a large drop compared to the previous year. The only sectors that had an increase were the public administration, mainly, I guess, the public services such as health, and then the real estate, the financial and insurance, and the agriculture, who are still providing food to the people of Colombia, right?
Right.
And here on the pie chart, we can see that what are the main sectors as a share of GDP, right? So here, I did a comparison between 2020 and 2019, and it was that, but still commerce, freight, storage, and lodging were the main, is the largest sector in the economy of Colombia, and then manufacture and real estate. So what it is interesting is that agriculture is not the largest.
One clarification for people that are not too acquainted with this type of ideas. When you talk about public administration, 80% of the share in the GDP, that's basically the contracts from government, right? Construction of buildings, construction of roads, construction of bridges, and the salaries, right? The salaries of the
right. It's all public administration. Also, the military is involved, but all the things that are public. So during the pandemic, it was that public administration didn't shut down, right? They continue to work.
Do they have big enterprises from the government, like BOA here?
No, they don't. No. This is much more a capitalist country.
Okay.
Yeah, they're more free market economy. So what happened is that unemployment became high. Right now, it's like unemployment is over 15%. And well, what happened is that as lockdowns became a norm during COVID-19 crisis, unemployment grew up to 19.8%, and later it became like 15.1%. And this is like continued to, well, it may continue to rise a bit as we had these problems right now, like demonstrations, and people cannot go to work, right? There's no transportation. So right now there's a lot of uncertainty that it is likely that unemployment is going to continue around 15. Colombia is not a country that is heading towards normalization right now, as vaccines is not well, vaccination is still inefficient right now. Like not many people are vaccinated, so Colombia cannot go to normality right now. It's like all lockdown measures are easing, and people are walking the streets without masks. Here is like right now, this week, they're trying to ease a little bit, but as vaccination is not covering all the people in Colombia, it is likely that unemployment is going to continue, right? So there's a relationship between unemployment.
In terms of vaccinations, where are they at? Like in terms of vaccinating the general public, are they doing it like in Bolivia by age group or?
It is by age. Right now, it's like 50, I think.
50 and up.
50 people over 50 years old are getting vaccinated.
Okay.
But the good thing is that distribution is much more efficient. It's like private security and government security institutions are very efficient in administering vaccination. So you just have these institutions distributed almost everywhere around Bogota and Colombia. So queues are not that long, and also you have to book online. It's close to what is going on in the United States.
Okay.
It is not like in Bolivia. You have to go to a very long line and wait there for the whole day, and let's see if you get the vaccine, and also let's see if you get COVID, right? It's totally unsafe.
In Bolivia, you either get the vaccine or COVID, like you say.
Yeah, so
most people get COVID.
Here things are more organized. And also the public health system is much more efficient, right? It's more organized. Their establishments are much newer. There's a lot of investment in this kind of institutions. Well, what happened then, it was also that young got really affected by the unemployment. Those were the first that were laid off from the job market, right? Here's a comparison. Well, this table is from the International Labour Organization, and as you can see, the unemployment rate in 2020, it was very high for young women between between ages of 15 to 24 years old.
15, sorry, 15 is the legal working age?
Yeah, well,
okay.
For statistical purposes.
Okay.
Yeah, because when you calculate the economic population, economically active population, yeah, it's over 10. But here's they made it over 15.
Okay.
And that happens because sometimes in rural areas they have to work when they are over 10 years old, right? So that's why they do it this way. And well, young women was the most affected group in unemployment. Then young men, and then adult women and adult men over 25, right? So as unemployment was in the rise, poverty was also increasing, right? Our poverty indicators have grew from 32.3 to 42.4%, or also if you can see it national, it's like 35.7 to 42.9. So that was a very sharp rise in poverty.
But not en los centros poblados y rurales.
Yeah, that's curious because maybe they are more basic. So they didn't stop, as we saw on the previous chart, that agriculture had a little bit of a rise.
Right.
Yeah. Well, a little bit of economics here is that trade balance is negative since year 2014, and that's mainly because of the drop on commodities in the international market, right? So exports were like below year 2014, below these things happen. Here are the main exports of Colombia. Colombia mainly exports are crude petroleum, coal briquettes, refined petroleum, right, and coffee. And where do they export is mainly the US. It's like 30.7% of the exports that go to the US, and then Panama, which is a neighbor of Colombia. And then China, right? And what are the main imports are communications equipment, broadcasting equipment, and cars, and also some kind of refined petroleum. And they import mainly from the US and China, right? Like most of Latin America. Yeah. So the main issue here is fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit was on the rise. It's like for year 2020, fiscal deficit is close to what happened in Bolivia, 7.8% of GDP. And for 2021, what the government is expecting is about 8.6% increase in deficit. And that was the main purpose of the Duque was trying to put into place. The tax reform, what they had, it was they were thinking making some revisions to VAT, the value-added tax. Here in Colombia, it's like VAT is diverse. There's not a specific number for taxing products. It's not like in Bolivia, like everything is 13%. Here is like they make some kind of classification, like fish, like meat. So things that are from the main basket of products may be exempt of tax, but the other things have to have a tax, right? then they were going to they were going to have an increase on income tax to people that were going to earn more than $830. Also, they were going to increase the dividend tax from 10 to 15%. And also they were going to apply taxes to equity, to patrimonial. They were going to apply taxes that they were calling like green tax to pollution, to things that make pollution. And also they were going to tax retirement funds. So all this got mixed, and people were really angry about this. They said like, no, we cannot afford to pay more tax if we are coming out from a COVID-19, from the pandemic, and hence we don't have any money to pay these things. And that's how the demonstrations on streets escalated. I think most of this tax reform came into place to the Congress around the beginning of April. And as demonstrations started, there were a lot of road blocking. There were furious demonstrations in the center of Bogota. It's estimated that around 800 people got injured, 850 people got injured in these demonstrations. And violence was really harsh on even in police and also in the people, in the civilians. So Duque had to stop this. Duque stopped the tax reform in around May 1st, May 2nd. And even after he stopped, he decided to retract from proposing this tax reform. People were continued to be angry, and they continued to demonstrate against the government, saying that that the government has been really harsh to people. There was a lot of violence, and that is not the way to solve conflicts.
Couple questions. Can I cut you off for just a second, just out of curiosity?
Right.
A couple questions that come to my mind looking at this. One is, well, they're kind of related. When you look at this, it doesn't seem like these would be measures that would affect the vast majority of Colombians. I can't imagine that a very high percentage of the general population is making $830 a month or more. We were talking about this off before we started recording, and the minimum wage is close to $300, and most people, or a very high percentage, don't make much more than that, correct? And the other question I have, and this I have no idea, in terms of the informal sector, what percentage of the labor force is informal?
It's about 40, around between 40 and 50.
Okay,
wow.
So which is pretty high. So between those two things, what I'm trying to figure out here is how did the protests build momentum when, and again, I'm not saying it's this, but it seems when you look at these proposals in the tax reform, that they wouldn't affect a large percentage or the majority of the people.
The way how I see it, and how also the media has seen this event, is like the rich people is gonna be the ones who are gonna get taxed. And what they say is that, well, people continue to oppose to the measure, and it's like violence continued to take place in regions such as Cali, which is a region that has a lot of problems with violence, right? What I read in one article about economy in The Economist, it was that most of these things are fueled by the left wing. That's what the economy says. It's like
is there a strong or union presence like there is in Bolivia, like with the gremialistas and
yes, there is. There is. But something that is very interesting is that what happens is that unionist leaders were murdered like a couple of years ago. So it is like most of these radical groups are taking the lead on this kind of movements. As we were talking before, like since the peace deal that the previous president has put into place, and that was supposed to dismantle the FARC, that radical movement that committed a lot of violence in Colombia. And what happened was that there are still some remains of these groups that are kind of organized and are fueling this kind of protests. So this is one thing. And they're trying to take control of this kind of situations, and they are like maybe hiring how you call this the young to commit crimes and to do this kind of things like burning a bus or destroying a police station or even killing policemen, right? So there's a lot of things like this going on, and that's what the economy says. And also the other ingredient is that, as we saw before, is youth unemployment is really high. You have those people that are not studying, they are not working. It's what they call before the ninis. They don't work, they don't study. So they are into this movement. They are feeling identified, like the government has not done so much for them. They're still unemployed. So they decided to join this movement. Okay. Now, there is an effect also from dropping this tax reform, is that Duque had a plan to what to do with this money, and it was to support this young to. Now it's really uncertain of what is going to happen, because the government really needs the money to make public policy, to support their programs on inequality and also to reduce poverty. But as they have dropped this, I don't know what they're gonna do.
Yeah, one of the things I saw is that when I was looking at why are people protesting, it seems like a snowball effect. Like, you know, it starts off with people who are, people start to pile on. They see something's gaining momentum, and so, and one of the what you just mentioned, they need what were they use that revenue for? One of the demands that seems to be at the top of the list is public universities aren't free, right? In Bolivia, they're free. The tuition is free.
No, here no. But now Duque is trying to make it free for
right.
Yeah, it's trying to become a little cheaper.
Yeah, so that's one of the demands, but that money's got to come from somewhere. Go ahead, Ernesto.
From somewhere, right?
Ernesto, you want to say something?
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, really, there are so many things that one can say about this, because it's so hard to pick the angle here. I'm going to choose one angle. I think it's just the political angle. For a person that is not too acquainted with Colombian politics, Rafa, my feeling from where I am is that Colombia is more or less, it's a country governed, if you want to speak in American terms, it's governed by the Republican Party, has been governed by the Republican Party ever since 1948 until today. My feeling is that the political right is so strong in Colombia that it's overpowering, it's monopolic in political terms. And I think that's one of the factors that's just making people, not only from the left, but especially young people, you know, there's no diversity in Colombia. The political right is so strong that nobody else has anything to say there except the guerrillas, and the guerrillas just signed the peace treaty, and the peace treaty is not being implemented, so on and so forth. But my main is, am I right or not? Colombia is a country where the Republican Party, quote unquote, this is just an analogy, is governing that country since 1948. I mean, there is no say so from anybody else. It's just an extreme rightist political country. Is it, or is that the case or not?
I think you're right, because with what happened with Sanchez de Lozada, and Sanchez de Lozada had almost the same kind of problems, right? It's like he tried to criticize the movement, like these people are not are trying to balance things here with my plan, and he's like trying to criticize more the problem than trying to solve it. So the dialogue between the government and the protesters is like, there's no way to find a point where we can, with Sanchez de Lozada, what is going on also with Duque, because he comes to TV and he says like, no, these people are hired, these people are coming from somewhere else, and they're trying to destroy all the things that we have done so far. So I don't see any ground here that they can try to make a consensus on what we should do in order to continue living in peace, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is going to happen?
What are the main
points,
what are the main points that the huelguistas want? What do they want to speak about?
There's the thing, tax reform, and the tax reform was already canceled. Like Uribe said on May 2nd that, no, this tax reform is not gonna go, please go, everybody go to your home. And it's like, no, now we have more demands. It's like they had about 100 demands on the table. And one of them are that they should not spray coca leaves in the regions, in the producing regions, because they use glyphosate, right? That can.
Right.
So that was one demand.
That's a good point that you're making there, Rafa. Just sorry that I interrupt. It's an important point, because in Bolivia, we never accepted glyphosate in the area of coca production. Okay, it's not something that we just have to skip it. That's what I mean. In the Bolivian politics against the coca leaf production, that has always been a veto. You know. Even in times when the U.S. Imposed a lot of policies on the war on drugs, in Bolivia it was just non-speakable talking about spraying the coca leaves like they do in Colombia, for example. You know, and I don't know if that's fair or not, but the talk about glyphosate is pretty bad. There's pretty bad talk about glyphosate in many other countries and the effects of it. So is it so unfair that they don't want to be sprayed by glyphosate?
Well,
isn't it rational to say no, don't do it?
To say not, don't do it. But the thing is, like, how come one thing is going leading to another?
Right.
So how demands are increasing from, first it was the tax reform, and now we are not, we want also that you should not spray these things, you should not spray coca leaves with glyphosate. And then there are also other demands, such as the introduction of a basic income program for 20 million people, which is going to cost about 6% of the GDP. So demands keep. Other perspective is that we are looking at a government, as many governments in Latin America, that are not doing the work well. Like, they are doing things that are not well engaged to what is going on in the countries. Like, governments are not hearing to people on what, how they should do, what are the main necessities, what they need to solve for them, that only a government can do. And the worst thing was that there was that people even protesting against a major who was who misspent about 40% of a budget for a virtual fair, as they were in a crisis, like we are in a COVID pandemic, and this guy is like wasting our money. So it seems that there is a failure on how governments are hearing people. Mm-hmm. And this happens in Colombia, this happens also in Bolivia very often. So I believe that there has to be a change on how the state system works, right? On how people get to tell the government on what kind of things are real.
Very interesting what you mentioned.
Yeah.
Governments are not listening, and that's the crux of it.
Can I interject with
something? Important point.
Can I interject with something here? I didn't know a lot about Duque before any of this, other than he was a right Uribista. And what I did see when researching the situation there a little bit before the podcast was that he hasn't been about a year ago or a year and a half ago. There were reforms that were directed at what Rafa's saying about that the government's not listening to the demands of the people. There's a disconnect. They don't know how to figure out how to cover needs that only the government can meet or provide for. And about a year and a half ago, there was a reform or some measures put in place that were designed at increasing employment. There were tax incentives put in place for businesses that were hiring younger workers between 18 and 25 or 28 or something like that. They were lowering like pretty much in many countries, people's contribution to the state health system when they take it out of your pay. In Bolivia, the employer covers this, but I think in Bolivia the employee covers it. There's a contribution or basically a tax that's deducted from your paycheck to cover that goes to the state health system, and also what's the word? Reembolso. How do you say it in English? Shit. Reembolso, a tax return, right?
Reimbursement.
Yeah, reimbursement.
Yeah.
Thank you. Of 100% value-added tax to the
reimbursement,
poor.
Yes.
A reimbursement. So a tax reimbursement of the VAT or the IVA for the poor. I don't know how they're measuring who's poor, but I mean, what I'm getting at here is that before the pandemic, it seemed like the government was taking steps or taking into account certain things. What you were saying, the most affected in the pandemic have been the younger workers, right? Between 15 and 25, basically, who've been hit the hardest and lost jobs. Pre-pandemic, the government was putting in place tax incentives for companies to employ, people in that same demographic, and a reimbursement on the VAT for people who with low income. So I guess what I'm getting, I'm not saying Duque is a socialist or on the left or anything, but it does seem there has been an effort on his administration to reach out or cover these needs, I guess is what I'm saying. And so, and even with this tax reform itself, the one that sparked all these protests back at the end of April, is that they don't seem like crazy measures, in the sense that they're not saying, oh, you make minimum wage, they're not raising the taxes on minimum wage and like the green tax. Those don't seem to directly hit these people. not to say they're not affected, right? Again, it's a snowball effect where some people start to complain, and then other people, you know, they see the government in a vulnerable position, and they think it's probably an opportune moment to try to make themselves heard.
You don't think the VAT tax hits everybody?
It does hit everybody.
Sure.
Well, but I mean, I'm not saying the whole thing, but it's.
But that's what's
the utilities. The utilities. There's like a 19% on utilities, right? That's nuts. But that's a high tax. What I saw before the show is that just like in Bolivia, there's different segments. Like if you consume up to this many kilowatts or whatever, then your rate is this much. If you consume, like, you know, a business that has whatever,
pay more.
1 million air conditioners running in like a restaurant that's got a walk-in refrigerator and blah blah blah, they're going to pay more because they consume more. So what I'm saying there is that for the utilities, it was like the top, like the fourth, fifth, and sixth tier or something like that. It wasn't the person sitting at home using a fan or even an air conditioner in their apartment that was going to have to deal with that increase. So I guess my point is that in going back is how did this the pandemic, I think, exacerbated things, but how did it get so out of control? Because I mean, at least from where I stand, they don't seem like nobody should be increasing taxes at this point, right? But the government also doesn't have any money, and so they've got to figure something out. And I want to get into something else here before I let either of you comment or respond. Is the death toll? What does seem to be characteristic of this government is they aren't very careful at protecting the lives of protesters. And even prior to this situation, Duque and his, when did he get sworn in? 2018?
2018 against Petro, a left-wing guy.
He's
who
got,
right now is like feeling things. Like,
how many people, how many political deaths, I don't even say political deaths, or deaths of protesters have accumulated at this point?
it was about 800. No, that
What?
it was like 40 people, I think. No, that it was like 40 people, I think. Something around
in
that.
these
Between
protests?
20 and 40. Yeah.
And then prior to this,
it was quite high.
That's still lower than in Bolivia in 2003.
Yeah.
Okay.
In Bolivia, there were more than 60 people died. Mm-hmm.
But the point, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that once you know, deaths are ammunition for the opposition, basically. Once people start dying, it's really hard to make things get better, and they're going to keep getting. I don't know if he can recover at this point, because it's not a small number. If it's 40, I mean,
no, it's big. That's why Goni had to leave Bolivia. He's still away because of those 60 guys, you know.
Mm-hmm. 20 years later, almost.
I mean, corruption didn't run him away. He could have stolen the whole money of Bolivia, but the point is the dead people. And just think about him. He's still under suits, legal suits in the States because of the dead, because of the dead people. They're charging him because to pay daños y perjuicios because of the dead people. Yeah, so it's the dead. Dead people make governments fall. What is interesting about Colombia is that not even with those 40 people, these guys are going to fall. They don't even think about renouncing. They don't resignation.
What's
because the political right is so overwhelming. It's so overwhelming, man. That's what really impresses me about Colombia. You know, it's pretty much like the panorama in politics in Colombia. It's pretty much like Santa Cruz. The political right is overwhelming.
But is there re-election? Is there re-election? I can't remember if there's re-election or not.
No, there's no re-election.
When's his term up?
And that's what
It's a
Luke said,
5-year
like,
term?
Petro it's a 5-year term. So this guy is gonna leave office next year.
Okay. So he's,
One economic question, Rafa. Oh, please go ahead.
Yeah.
no, go ahead. I was just
Go
gonna say,
ahead.
he doesn't have much to lose at this point. Personally, I mean, he's got a year left in his term, basically, and there's no
Yeah,
re-election.
because and right now Petro is like he's supporting more like the protesters, and also he goes against the block roads because it's also something that is not making it easy for the people who live in Colombia to go to work and all that stuff. So right now it's like things are trying to slow down, right?
Mm-hmm. To de-escalate.
Yeah, protest is trying to slow down.
Rafa, I have a curiosity here. You said 50% more or less, or between 40 and 50% of the economic structure is informal, right? Will those informal people pay taxes? Like in Bolivia, they don't pay taxes. You go to the market, you buy something, there's no factura.
Exactly.
There's
it's almost the same.
No VAT.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. So those people are not affected by the VAT tax, right? Right. But I mean that the tax reform was not affecting that 50% of the economy.
No.
Interesting. Interesting. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it's a dramatic panorama because what you mentioned, indirectly, the tax reform was not enough to make such a big upheaval. There's something below that is making this whole thing fuel, and it's not like I don't know. Some people say it's the terroristas or it's the narcos that are fueling the money. No, it's the people that have gone out. We have seen it, I mean, the good thing about the current affairs is that you see things, I've seen people in Bogota, people in Cali, go out, and they're not being fueled by narcotraficantes. It's just the people that went out and protested, right? Protesters are just protesters because they're not happy with what's happening in Colombia. And I think that's something that the government is not willing to understand. They can hear it, but they're not understanding. And this is going to end up in the left overtaking the government, or is it too soon to say something like that, Raf?
Well, yeah, what it happens is that they're not listening. And as I said before, it's like Sanchez de Lozada, he's sending the police forces to just clear the roads and go back to normal. And that is not the way how things are going to end. It is a lot likely that something's going to happen.
Right.
What I see when you say there's like 100 different demands, I don't know how you can sit down at a negotiating table with people from 100 different sides, and that just that's
so things are escalating to something else right now.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like everybody, again, I keep saying it, but they're piling on. I'm not saying the government's a victim here, but they're taking a situation with a government that's up against the wall, and that seems like it's going to make it really difficult for things to cool down,
to solve.
Yeah,
but still, like, he has less than a year to end his presidency, right? Like, the president's gonna be elected next year, I guess, around the mid-year, I guess.
Mid-year. Okay. Adding to something that Ernesto was asking about, if this is the chance for a president on the left to end up winning an election. Duque, I saw this more than once in different sources. According to polls, is the least popular president in I don't know, like it said recent history or something. I don't know how far back they're going, but his numbers are awful. Yeah, I don't know if he's going to be able to. I don't know if he's going to be able to clean up in a year. And when I say it's not his problem, it's if he's done in a year, he's got a party that he has to respond to, right? So the party system there how's that work? Is in terms of, you know, how many candidates could show up, I guess, in the elections next year?
It's like in Bolivia, but at least for the election where Duque and Petro were, it's like Duque won in second round. It's about, yeah, for 54% compared to 42.
What do you need for a runoff?
Sorry?
How does the runoff system work? Like in Bolivia, you have to either to end up in a runoff, it has to be if none of the candidates have 40%, there's a runoff between the first two. And if any candidate has more than 40% but less than 50%, there has to be less than a 10-point spread, right?
I think here is majority, but since it is second round, I believe that there has to be some margin. I'm not quite sure.
Okay. What's going to be interesting, I guess. What's your anything else you guys want to say? What I'm asking you personally, since you live there, is how's your optimism meter at this point? How do you feel about the situation in the next few months?
Right now, I think things are going to cool down. There's a way that's going to cool down somehow. I believe that vaccination is going to continue. That's going to help to keep the economy running. And also people who are is already working here in Bogota, they are already tired of these things. Like you're trying to drive your car, and aside of the traffic, you have to come up with those kind of protests all randomly. Mm-hmm. So there's a movement that's saying like, no, we do not have to support this.
Like a counter protest.
A counter protest, yeah. So we have to continue just working. But it also depends on the government, on how Duque is gonna handle these things, right? So if he's gonna continue bringing the force and make the government be seen as violent with the international community, because what Duque got is like the international reputation of Colombia, and particularly with the Colombian government, is that they escalated violence. Like how come police can go? It shouldn't be happening, right? Mm-hmm. So it depends on how negotiations between Duque and these groups go. Right. But as he has just less than 1 year, I think he just might end his presidency by the term.
He's a lame duck.
Sorry?
He's a lame duck.
Lame duck means you don't get when you don't get another term. Internet just went.
Reach an agreement now.
So can you repeat that? Sorry, the internet just froze up for a second there.
No, my question is, does Rafa think that there's going to be an agreement? It doesn't seem possible.
No, probably not.
It doesn't seem possible, you know, because why should the left agree? They're going to an election in a year. Okay, it seems like that's not gaining points for an election for the left. The left will gain showing that the government is not democratically able to reach an agreement with them, and they're going to corner the government as a criminal government, as a non-dialogue, a non-negotiator, blah, blah, blah. So it doesn't seem like there's going to be an agreement there. What do you think?
Probably cool down, as I'm saying, like as there are counter protests. Right now, this is like the political. This is just like Evo, like when he was blocking roads and all the stuff. It's like this is his political in 2022, right? For Petro, for his second time running. Right. But he cannot mess up like screwing everybody up.
Yeah,
as you literally say, right?
People do get tired of.
You don't. Yeah, people get tired of these things, and and this might become counterproductive for him, for Petro, right? So maybe conflict might continue, but not as intense as right now, as previous week. So there has to be a point where things just slow down a bit, right? Just cool down.
All right.
Have the exports of oil gone down? I don't remember that from your charts. Did they decrease the exports of oil to the US?
I don't think they have decreased, but prices right now are so like increasing. So maybe they're getting more income from oil right now.
Yeah. Well, that's my point. Because if money comes in, then the fiscal deficit is going to decrease.
To be not a problem.
Yeah. As far as you make money, you don't have to save money. That's
right. You can just spend. That's it.
At least not be so desperate, no? Because the whole issue about tax reform is because they were desperate. But if they have income coming in from exports, then they're going to be less desperate.
That's a good point. Like commodities can save not only the producers, right? But for what things we have seen historically, as we saw on the on the trade deficits that I've shown in my chart, is like we were in a pretty bad shape. But if recovery around the world becomes a priority, takes place,
right?
Probably commodity prices are going to rise and are going to help a little bit on fiscal deficit.
Some economists predict that the rebound of the U.S. economy is going to be big, because that has happened in the past, right?
Yeah. That's why also forecasts are quite high for 2021.
Right. So if the rebound is true in the States, that's going to benefit Colombia and countries that are selling things to the U.S., right?
What was the question?
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Well, if the US economy rebound, and also China does, it is a lot likely that's going to spill over Latin America, because we are commodity producers, and trade is going to rise, right? We're going to get money out from this situation, right? Yeah, and also I guess it's going to help a lot for fiscal deficit as well, not only in Colombia, also in Latin America.
Right. Wow. The Masistas are very lucky people, right?
Sort of. Sort of.
Because if there's the rebound, they're going to benefit from it. And the elections in 4 years or 5 years, forget about that again, huh?
Well, they're already there. They're already taking. I mean, that's already happening. I'm sure it's happening everywhere. Obviously, everybody, or pretty much every country in the world, experienced negative growth, right, in 2020, and obviously it's already doing it. Oh, for this year we're forecasting 5% or 5.5% or whatever, which, 5% usually sounds pretty good, but that 5% is, you still haven't recovered from this almost 7% last year, right? I mean, and that's gonna, it's really hard not to go up once you hit the bottom, right? So that's what I'm saying. And politically, that's going to be taken advantage of all over the world. The Masistas are lucky. Yeah.
No, and they are taking advantage a lot, because the other day I saw a publication from the National Institute of Statistics, and they were comparing on how unemployment was during Agnes government and how unemployment is right now. And it's like Agnes government was really, really, really high. It was because lockdowns started, or they didn't know how to handle this thing, because it was something totally unknown, the virus situation, right? But right now it's like we have vaccine, we have many things going on. So of course, unemployment is going to be much less than what it was a year ago. So that's not, there's no comparison of those things.
Right.
I don't know, they just publish things that are not so relevant. Think that they should not take advantage of those things because they are wrong.
Right. And nobody says what you're saying. Nobody says the contrary, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Your point of view is very interesting. It's correct. You can't compare that. Oranges with bananas.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. But they're doing it. They've been doing it since day one in the Arce administration. That's no doubt about it. And
also most of.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and also most of their policies that they are implementing right now is like those policies take time to build, to structure, and it's that right now they have to implement, and they are saying that no, this is what our government is doing, and that's totally wrong, right?
Gentlemen, we're at an hour, and I think we've covered everything. Or not everything, but plenty.
Well, just a glance of how Colombia.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And
very interesting.
I keep my fingers crossed for you guys over there. I have other friends as well that are there, and well, even for people who aren't.
What time is it in where you are, Paul?
Where I am? It's
you're in Seattle, right?
Yeah, it's 7:55 early. So we started this at just about 7 a.m. local time. The internet's freezing up again.
Financiando todas estas cosas. Y Petro está sacando ventaja de todo esto. Hey, Paul.
Yo.
Froze.
Yeah, it froze. Sorry, the internet's being. I just messaged you guys. I wish I could blame it on Bolivia, but I can't. So I'll have to blame my awful internet on something else. It's Biden's fault.
The U.S. connection internet is too slow, man.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on here.
I just got your message.
So I apologize to you guys and everybody else who's putting up with the technical difficulties.
Did you buy a chip or something?
Did I what? No, I'm using the
SIM card?
Wi-Fi where I'm staying. I'm using the Wi-Fi here.
Oh, get a SIM card. That's not way better.
I do have one, but I didn't think I was going to need it. But anyway.
Because you get like 2 gigas, I think, or something. It's a lot.
Oh yeah, I've got 4 on the SIM card.
For $20, $25 T-Mobile.
Yes, the internet. There's some good cheap plans here. I'm gonna end the recording here and say thank you to everybody who's watching, and apologize again for the technical difficulties towards the end here, and thank you, Rafael, for joining us and for taking the time to put that together.
Oh, thank you, Paul, and thank you, Ernesto, for inviting me. And well, hope to see you soon again with other topics.
Yeah, we should be, because it's very interesting to have the connection, the Colombian connection. You are our Colombian connection. So we'll be in touch. Interesting, because Colombia is going to be the protagonist of political events in the next 12 months or something like that, until the election comes.
Right.
So we should be following Colombia, and I think that'll be very interesting. And tomorrow, as you said, we should follow Peru, but because for us Bolivians, that's very important. That's almost
very important, and also for the region, and also because as you see, like in South America, most of left-wing parties are taking right. So, El Salvador with Bukele, so it seems that it's going to be like a coalition of left-wing parties all around.
Right.
Like South America and Latin America.
All right. I'm gonna sign off with the recording here, and we can continue off afterwards. And so thank you, everybody, and until next time.